How's it going, everyone? It is Drago. We're back with another chapter of Fairy Tale 100-Year Quest, Chapter 90, The Return, which is kind of crazy that we hit 90 chapters already. The cover for this chapter is Urza, Wendy, and Kana, and they're all at a spa, which they're all taking like a bath together, and Urza and Wendy, it's kind of cutesy, very much mirroring the other times they've done this. The main one that immediately comes to my mind is during Alvarez with like Urza comforting Wendy when they were like taking a bath together. Meanwhile, you got Kana in the background being kind of creepy, looking like she's about to grab someone. Which, to be real, the only time she really does that is like when Lucy's around, so it makes me think, like, is Lucy around? I don't remember her doing any of that to like Urza or Wendy. I just kind of like how like Urza's kind of looking at Wendy, kind of like making sure she's all good after like this whole arc. So we pick up back in Earthland. We get some like narration and stuff about like how they returned, and now we start to actually see some of the guild members again. So you get Master Makarov and Mira saying welcome back. This is where you get more of the narration and actually an explanation that Loki already came here and like told everyone about what's going on. So most of it was pretty much already explained by the time they got there. Team Fairy Tale returns home to Fairy Tale, and they're all like, we're home. Pretty much figured this would happen, which Juvia is going crazy darting for Gray. There's a little bit of a change for Gray. Instead of like freaking out that like Juvia's coming to grab him, he's like, oh hi Juvia, how's it going? Juvia's hugging him and she's like asking him like, are you injured? Like, if you are, let me examine you to find your injuries. Gray doesn't even go like, that's creepy. No, he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Gray is being very, very nice to Juvia here, which is probably because of what happened during this previous arc, him seeing a vision of him being with Juvia and his kid. Gray goes on to ask, how what Juvia was doing, and she goes on about how she was so worried that she just could not stop making Gray dolls, which even people in the guild start noticing, like, wow, Gray's being like a little bit different towards Juvia here. His personality's kind of changed, which, by the way, if you were going for like the ships, this chapter's got you covered, because there's so many like relationship moments in this chapter already. So we go to Lucy and Levy reuniting yet again, which you get Natsu not understanding how babies work, him asking, did you lay the egg yet? Lucy's just so disappointed in him. She's like, oh my goodness, Natsu, you're making me look like such a fool. Stop it, please. Gajiel tries to be the bigger man here, like, stop bugging her, but you just like exit on even more. Natsu's been pretty beat up from this last arc, and you see him bandaged up and stuff. He's like, you want to fight me, Gajiel? Let's go. To be real, I was kind of like, oh wow, is Gajiel actually not wanting to fight now? We're not kids anymore. We don't have to fight over every little thing. And I was like, oh wow, Gajiel, you've grown up quite a bit, man. It's a different side of Gajiel we usually don't see. So Lucy and Levy are talking about this. They're both like, whoa, what's up with this new Gajiel? And Levy is just like, I think he's starting to grow up little by little. Which Natsu's egging it on even more, like, oh, you really don't want to do this, Gajiel? Really? And he's like karate chopping him, which apparently those karate chops were enough to make him break. So he starts fighting with Natsu. Levy and Lucy are in the background like, oh, yep, these two didn't grow up at all. Which I like Levy. She's like, yep, sorry, I'm going to take that back. Everything I said about how Gajiel was a grown up, yeah, I'm gonna take that back. You get the Exceed squad starting to talk about like stuff that was happening, and they're asking about Toka, and like she stayed in her homeland, which I kind of love. This Lily was saying to Loxus, hoping that Toka would have stayed there, because then she could have became Loxus's cat partner, which he's just in the background like, I don't want a cat, leave me alone, man. All you dragon slayers got cats. I want a cat. Which the rest of the Thunder Legion, they're like, oh, he's got us. He doesn't need a cat. Freed went a little too literal with this, because he's like, Loxus, if you need a cat, I will be your cat. Which I think the Thunder Legion definitely realizes the undertone that's happening here, because Evergreen was saying, yeah, that'd suit you, Freed. Which Elfman's just in the background, like, not getting it, like, what? How would that suit him? What? So Kana starts to ask about Edelus and like how they were doing. It's kind of cute that the first person to like bring up a question about it is Lizana, since she was the person in the guild that spent the most time there. Pretty much just Wendy going on about how they're all doing fine and that they actually managed to live without magic power. I like Lily asking about Mystigan and like how he's doing. They're like, oh, he became a splendid king. Which they start talking about Urza and like how she went from Urza Nightwalker, the fairy hunter, to Urza Nightwalker, the maid, which I thought Urza was going to be in the guild and she was going to get embarrassed that they're telling this story, which, to be honest, we don't even really get a reaction from the guild thinking it's like funny or not. We go away from the guild and we pick up with Uraz and Jalal having a nice meal together. The ships have sailed this chapter. So Uraz and Jalal are having a meal together, and Urza's like, oh, you're still in town, I thought you would be out doing your crime sorciers stuff. Jalal is like, I couldn't leave town, until I saw that you were safe with my own eyes and that you're like back in earthland. So they start talking about their kind of like attacking dark guild business, because Jalal was like, the whole reason why I was in like Magnolia and dealing with Fairy Tale was the White Wizard. Urza is saying that Ferris wasn't the real White Wizard and that it's someone entirely else, and that their whereabouts are unknown. But Jalal's more focused on the person he was suspecting was Ferris, and that she's dealt with. He doesn't really care about anything else now. Which they both seemed like, that's true. And they both kind of like end that on a nice note, which I would be interested in this as well, because Urza asks, what are you going to do now, Jalal? And especially since like you go from like the end of the series where he got like pardoned of all of his crimes, it really would be like, well, what are you going to do with your time in life now? Especially with like crime sorcier, like does that still exist? Answers the question by, there's many parts of the magic world that are still shrouded in darkness. Urza cuts him off and is like, you keep doing this, burdening yourself with, I gotta take all this darkness. I gotta, fight the evils of this world. I like Jalal's response to this, because he's like, no matter how much I may be pardoned and no matter who forgives me, as long as there is darkness in this world, I will continue to fight. Which Urza kind of sees through this immediately, and she's like, why are you still punishing yourself? Jalal pretty much accepted all this because he's like, this isn't my punishment, it's my life now. This next part of the chapter here, I legit was initially thinking that we were actually gonna get her like confessing to Jalal, which low-key, if you detect the undertones here, it pretty much is. You get Urza saying to Jalal, couldn't you bring that way of life closer to me, as she proceeds to put her hand on top of Jalal's, and then gives him an invite to join Fairy Tale, which is not just him she invites, she also invites Melody. He's immediately kind of like awestruck or whatever. He has no idea really how to respond. And if you notice, he can't really entirely look Urza in the face. Like he's kind of looking away like, oh my goodness, she's holding my hand right now. I can't do this. Which Urza is pretty cool about this, because she's like, you don't need to answer me right away. Just go think about it. Come back to me when you're ready. Which low-key I really did think she was actually going to confess to him. Urza and Jalal end it by Jalal saying yes, he will think it over. Now we go over to the Wizard Guild Diablos, which their freaking guild hall looks pretty darn cool. I kid you not, when I first saw who they had hung up here, I was like, is that Urza again? Like, is this going back to Tartaros all of a sudden? We got like a Tartaros flashback? But then I was like, oh, it's Silene, which they had her really messed up, by the way. So you get their whole guild talking about Silene now. So you get their guild master talking about how beautiful Silene is. And pretty much everyone else in the guild is talking about Suzaku and like, oh man, you actually defeated one of the 4 dragon gods. Which Suzaku is really, really beat up. And he's like, I barely beat her myself. So their guild master is talking about, once he eats her, he'll gain the power to cross dimensions. Silene is actually waking up, which most of them seem pretty darn surprised by it. Like, she's awake? She is actually opening her eyes? They all thought, like, Suzaku actually killed her, which they all pretty much go into taunt mode. Like, how does it feel to be caught by humans, dragon? But she goes down to business, Silene, because she's like, hey, which one of you killed the Carnegie? Which the guildmaster just doesn't get what the flip she's going for. Which Suzaku literally just goes way too honest with it, and he just reveals it, saying, hey, yeah, this guy here, my guildmaster, he did it. Suzaku was like, yeah, Carnegie was one of her kids, and the guildmaster is absolutely thrilled about it, because he's like, oh, I ate her kid, now I get to eat her, the parent? Awesome. Bad thing to taunt right here. Because he's like, I'm not eating you in your human form. You gotta turn into a dragon now. Hurry up and turn into that beast. Which, bad idea to get her to turn into her dragon form. Really bad idea. Half the guild realizes, yeah, this is a really bad idea to get her to turn into a dragon. But the other half are like, well, freaking Suzaku beat her, she can't be that mad. Even Suzaku is really confident, like, I did it with my own power. I can defeat her again. Which Silene goes full dragon, and the guildmaster is really excited for this. The Guildmaster starts hyping himself up because he's like, let me show you my 4 beasts dragon slayer magic. Which all that hype was for nothing because he immediately gets crushed. Which I'm going to say that's a 100% dead because that blood splatter and everything on the ground, good luck coming back from that. His whole guild is freaking out that they just saw their guildmaster die. Silene basically is like, you were far from a good song, but I loved you, Carnegie. And, I just killed the enemy that defeated you. So you have been avenged. Which Suzaku seems to be really freaked out and he kind of starts to put together, like, did you purposely throw just to get here to kill my master? Which, yeah, she's like, yeah, I appreciate you guiding me here, Suzaku. You did my job for me. She just decides to spare Suzaku because she's like, I acknowledge your strength and, killing you would be a waste. And also, since you ate my kid, you're technically kind of part of my child, which I'll let you live. Then she starts to mock them like, did you really think a dragon could be beat by a human? And that is the end of the chapter. So my thoughts. I pretty much figured that we were going to get a chapter immediately following the events of like what happened with Silene and stuff. Completely just like the guild reconnecting with each other, which I didn't really think it was going to be so many like relationship moments. I thought it was just going to be the guild having funsy chats and kind of like little squabbles and stuff, which I pretty much figured we were going to get a moment between Gray and Juvia, especially with how this whole last arc went completely down for Gray. Getting visions of, seeing a life with Juvia and having a kid with her, obviously going back to Earthland and seeing with her again, it would very much, probably spark stuff knowing what their future could lead to, which you can very much tell he has a different attitude with Juvia when they first meet here because he seems way more, seems almost like way more outgoing with her, way more accepting of her like really hardcore tendencies, like her just like dashing to him, hugging him, and even like asking like how she's doing, like how's everything going with you, Juvia. Instead of usually being like grossed out by her and like, whoa, that's creepy, Juvia. You can very much even tell that his personality was different with Juvia here in like a better way because the rest of the guild even starts noticing like, oh, hey, he's treating Juvia a lot differently now. Like, that's crazy. Which I like the stuff with Lucy and Levy and them talking about like Natsu and Gajil and how each one of them is like growing up, and then they realize, oh yeah, what we were talking about, that was kind of a lie. Like they're just still as childish as they were. I like Gajil trying to be the bigger man, but he got egged on by Natsu way too fast, man. He could have had a really good moment with Levy then. She could have said, look at how adult my Gajil is. But then he had to fight Natsu and made himself look like a kid again. I flippin' love that Lily wanted to give Loxus a cat so he can have a little XC partner, but like he seemed not into it. But like if he legit got the opportunity to get a little XC'd to constantly fly him around as a little dragon slayer, would he take that opportunity? I think he probably would. So getting into the big one of the moments that happened here, that would be between Urza and Jalal. I like that they're talking about, what they're going to do in the future, and she doesn't want Jalal to be so freaking hard on himself, basically holding himself for the sins that he's committed. Gosh dang, man, I legit thought we were going to get Urza, like, confessing to freaking Jalal. We got faked out yet again. I mean, like, her inviting him to Fairy Tail, I think it is going to have him eventually join. So probably Crime Sorcier will probably go away. Potentially Jalal and Meldy as members of Fairy Tail, which, if Jalal got into the guild, it would probably strengthen their relationship between Urza and Jalal. And to be honest, Jalal might join the main team then. And then let's say you had Meldy join, she would probably get along quite nice with, Juvia and stuff. I don't know if she, like, what team she would be part of, like, what other team she'd join. She'd probably, like, just partner up with Juvia or Jalal. But I do think it is, like, Urza trying to, like, weasel her way to, say that she loves them and stuff. Either way, I actually really liked the moment between Uraz and Jalal, even though it wasn't them talking about like them loving each other. They basically love each other. Come on. But I do like the prospect that Jalal and Meldy could eventually join the guild. Now to the Diablos stuff. It does solve the question of, did Silene actually go with Suzaku? And yes, she did. And they really hung her up. Like, that's basically Urza at Tartaros levels of being hung. If you thought the Silene arc was done, which I actually did, surprise, it's not. It just moved locations because now it's taking place in Earthland because we got a rampaging Silene now. So I'm pretty confident that pretty much all the frickin' Diablos members probably couldn't defeat her, because if she was playing Suzaku so much, they all seem so shocked that their guildmaster, the strongest one of them, just went down with one stomp. I don't have much faith that they'll be able to take her down, so I wouldn't be surprised if you get like next chapter or something with her taking down the rest of the guild. Yes, she's sparing Suzaku, but like the other ones, I doubt they're gonna take this laying down, and they're probably gonna attack her, which they might be dead. Which means that Team Fairy Tail is probably gonna eventually fight her again, but in Earthland. So they'd be significantly depowered, but they can actually have way more people help them now, because you could potentially have, like Juvia, Gajiel, Jalal join the fight, or even the whole guild of Fairy Tail as a whole help join the fight to kill Silene. Either way, I thought this chapter was great. I like the little moments. Like, we don't need fights every time. You can just have this nice little chats and build relationships with people, and we're building up the story more and more. And I like potential prospects of where we could be going here and potential new members of the guild. So leave your comments down below. What you think of the chapter? I did a whole video just talking about like Gray's whole backstory, teams he's been part of, and his whole moveset. That was a really long video. It's like 40 minutes long. So if you want to check that out, check that out. But I imagine if you're listening to 100-Year Quest stuff, you've probably seen all of that with Gray already, because that was only covering from the end of Fairy Tail. So there's like no 100-Year Quest stuff in there. But if you're interested in that, check that out. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and this has been Drago, signing out.